if you were here last year, you might remember John in the big muscle suit and me in these gold shorts and this shirt that said faster. And if you look at the picture, it looks like I'm going pretty fast. And I'll admit, I felt like I was going fast, but I wasn't going fast. I mean, I'm too old for that. It was just perception, right? And it turns out that the way humans perceive speed can be completely independent of the actual speed of what's happening in the real world. So I wanted to talk about some real world examples of that. The first one is, that's awesome, is these crossing buttons, right? You press them, you get across the street a little faster. Well, in New York City, it turns out that about 75% of these crossing buttons were disconnected in the 1980s, right? It's when they installed a computer system to control all the traffic lights. But New York City was faced with this problem. It's going to cost us millions of dollars to remove the buttons. Let's leave them. And this is how the placebo button was born, right? People press this button and they think they're getting across the street faster and it makes them happy. Same thing on the London Underground. There are these buttons to open and close the door faster and people are pressing them every day. None of them work. All of the London Underground buttons for the doors are controlled by the operator. But people enjoy it. They get that placebo effect. My favorite placebo button is on our car. I love this car. This is the J-Lo car. Now it's the Pitbull car. I love the convertible, but let's face it, it's not a fast car. And yet, in this car, it has the button, the best placebo button ever, the sport button. My wife loves this button. She presses it and she goes so fast. And I remind her, I feel a little cruel, that this car has half the horsepower of a Ford Fiesta. The sport button isn't going to help you at all against that Ford Fiesta, but it's about perception. The Houston airport had a similar problem. People were complaining about how long they had to wait for their bags at baggage claim. So they got more baggage handlers, didn't make a difference. And they thought about the perception part of the problem. What did they do? They increased the length of the walk from the gate to the baggage claim by 6x. And the complaints stopped because people were occupied. They weren't standing there bored staring at nothing. So that can help the perception of speed, right? Same thing happened after World War II. The workforce increased dramatically. Elevators couldn't keep up with the number of workers in the buildings. Rather than have the costly install of more elevators, they looked at the perception of the problem, and they installed mirrors in elevator lobbies and in the elevators themselves. Today, we use TVs for this. People are occupied. They don't notice the wait, right? And so it really is a lot about the perception of speed in these real-world activities. When it comes to lines, no one is better than Disney, right? And they've got a lot of great tricks. If it's a 20-minute wait, they'll tell you it's a 30-minute wait because people love beating expectations. People hate seeing how long lines are, so they always hide the length of the line. So we know in general, making things faster improves the goodness of something. But making things faster usually requires more work. And I wanted to see if there were things that were less work, kind of slower, but still had that high level of goodness. And I found some great examples. This is Jeff Veen. He told this story about when he was working on Blogger and you went through the wizard to create your blog and you said, create blog. It happened so quickly, people didn't believe it was real, that their blog didn't really actually exist. So they installed this artificial delay. When you press the button, it just did nothing. And then it told you it was ready, and people thought it was ready. Same thing with these Coinstar machines. They count the change so quickly in usability testing, people doubted that it was the accurate amount. It must have made a mistake. You can't count coins that quickly. So what did they do? They still count them as quickly, but they had this artificial recording of coins making sounds, and they just displayed the results a little later. And people thought that it was more accurate, right? So it's about perception, and it goes in both ways. Now, how does this relate back to our work as working on the web? Definitely. I'm always reminded of this study from back in 2001, where they had people use various websites, and they measured the actual speed of the website, but then they asked the people their perception of how fast the website was. And it turned out the site that was perceived to be the fastest, Amazon.com, when you looked at the data, it was actually the slowest site. But the way that they had built their site, the way they had presented the data, the way the users perceived it, made it feel faster. And so this is what we need to do. We need to keep our eye on the ball. As much as I love data and metrics and looking at that, that's the tail wagging the dog. The real thing that we're after is to create an experience that people love and that they feel is fast. So we might be front-end engineers, we might be devs, we might be ops, but what we really are is perception brokers. Thank you very much. I'm on to the next one.